Stress is nothing new. We experience it every day. Family, work, friends, anything unexpected can cause stress. While stress is something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, what we may not know is how stress can affect us if it's not managed properly. In this presentation, we will learn the effects of stress on the brain and how to properly manage it. Stress directly affects our brains, and when it becomes overwhelming, it can begin to damage our brain size, brain structure, and the very function of our brain. Before we continue, let's watch this brief presentation by Madhumika Murgia on stress and the brain.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So we've seen some of the chemical effects of stress on our brain, but how does this manifest itself on the outside? Well, we become more forgetful when we're stressed. Stress can induce a constant state of fear and anxiety. Have you ever felt nervous and anxious at work? Then you come home only to begin thinking about the next day? You start to become depressed. Your outlook on life becomes bleak. Have you ever gone through a stressful event only to come out on the other end feeling sick? Stress makes you more vulnerable to disease by hurting your immune system. Stress also makes you stupid. I know this sounds funny, but your brain will seize. Ever freeze up in a job interview or in the middle of a presentation? Last but certainly not least of the end of how stress can affect your brain, you become more susceptible to mental illness. That means if stress is uncontrolled, you are more likely to end up with Alzheimer's and dementia. Our body's stress response kicks in when we're under a perceived threat. Normally, our body expends energy on a multitude of activities. These activities include managing our day-to-day functions, digesting food, keeping our organs functioning, and much more. When we encounter a threat, we go into fight or flight mode, and our brain diverts our energy into immediate needs. Our heart pumps blood faster, oxygen heads to our muscles, and the liver releases sugar, everything we need to fight the threat. Our brain is sending signals down to our adrenal gland to supply us with energy. This energy comes in the form of cortisol, which in small doses does help us, but eventually it will kill our brain cells. To keep us functioning, there are many ways to cope with stress. Basically, there are two ways to cope, healthy and unhealthy. First, we'll work through the unhealthy ways. Needless to say, these coping mechanisms are not solutions. They provide a temporary fix, but do not provide long-term solutions. In fact, they usually cause greater harm in the long run. Unhealthy ways of coping with stress are all around us. These methods would be considered the easy way out, a way of escaping reality. One would consider these methods as just avoiding the problem, or merely nervous impulses. Reaching for cigarettes, eating junk food to the extreme, drinking or consuming pills to escape reality. These methods may help someone feel better temporarily, but when the effects wear off, the problem returns. Furthermore, as we indulge on these methods, we develop resistances to their effects. Someone who drinks heavily needs to consume more alcohol to be able to experience its effects. If we were to reach for drugs, we would need to consume more drugs to experience its effects as we become more resistant. These methods do not solve the problem of stress. It merely provides a temporary escape. On the other side, there are a lot of healthy ways of dealing with stress. Physical activity helps burn away anxiety. Spending time with family and listening to music are all healthy ways of dealing with stress. There are some solutions I would like to highlight though. First, identify what causes your stress. If you can manage what causes your stress, you can better prepare for it. You can develop a support group to talk out difficult situations. Also, these factors can help you accept what is out of your realm of control. So, who is the target audience? Simply put, everyone is the target audience. I have been experiencing stress as far back as I can remember, all the way to my early youth. I remember being in first grade stressing out about my weekly spelling test. Right now I'm stressing out trying to get my work done for my master's program. Everyone experiences stress. For this project, I secretly tested my colleagues at work and my wife. Don't worry, I revealed my testing to them after everything was concluded. I observed my colleagues at work for a solid week, without change to any of the environment, and I made record of their actions. The same stressors constantly came up, such as stubborn customers, account creation, and standard fare for what my job consists of. The following week, I employed some secret stress managers. I decided to play music at work. I played music when I came into work and stopped at the end of the day, as well as with some pauses when I had to work with customers. I chose 80s music because of the fun, cheesy factor. No offense to the 80s fans. and at lunch I invited my colleagues to go for walks. The change in mood was immense. There was a lot more laughter in the office. We joked. Problems that would usually cause stress were laughed off. In the evening, I went for a run with my wife. Normally, when we would sit down for dinner and discuss what happened during the day and what was causing us to worry, we replaced these conversations with topics such as vacation, weekend plans, hanging out with friends. The mood was much more elevated. Thank you for taking the time to view my presentation. Remember, there are healthy ways of dealing with stress. Do your brain a favor.